Hello and welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive brought to you by NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra. The debate over delimitation has moved far beyond the drawing of electoral boundaries. It is now shaping up to be one of the biggest political and constitutional battles in recent years. At the heart of the issue is a simple but consequential question. If the government brings a delimitation bill back to Parliament, does it have the numbers to get it through? Well, the answer depends not just on Lok Sabha, but also on the Rajya Sabha, the type of legislation being introduced, and the position taken by several regional parties that could ultimately hold the balance of power. Let's begin with the Lok Sabha. The NDA enters the monsoon session with a stronger position than it had during the special session in April. Political realignments over the past few months include splits in some opposition parties and shifts in parliamentary support have improved the ruling alliance's numbers. However, even with these gains, the government still falls short of two-thirds majority required to pass a constitutional amendment if every member participates in voting. According to the latest parliamentary arithmetic, the NDA remains dependent on support or strategic abstentions from regional parties to cross the constitutional threshold. That distinction is critical because a constitutional amendment is governed by Article 368 of the Constitution. Such a bill requires not only a majority of the total membership of each house, but also a two-thirds majority of members present and voting. Unlike ordinary legislation, political convenience alone cannot bridge that gap. The challenge becomes even more significant in the Rajya Sabha. The NDA has improved its position in the upper house over the past year, but it still does not command the numbers needed to pass a constitutional amendment on its own. With the effective strength of the Rajya Sabha currently at 242, the two-thirds mark works out to 162 if all members vote. The NDA is estimated to have around 150 members, leaving it short of the required majority. Even if some opposition members abstain, the government would still need support from regional parties such as the YSRCP, the BJD, the BRS or others to comfortably clear the hurdle. This is why every regional party suddenly becomes politically significant. A common question that follows is whether the government could simply convene a joint sitting of Parliament to overcome resistance in the Rajya Sabha. The Constitution is clear on this point. Article 108 allows a joint sitting only in cases of disagreement over ordinary bills. Constitutional amendment bills cannot be passed through a joint session. That means if the government seeks to amend the Constitution as part of the delimitation exercise, it must independently secure the required special majority in both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. A joint sitting is simply not an available option for constitutional amendments. The political battle is therefore as important as the constitutional one. The BJP argues that delimitation is necessary to uphold the democratic principle of one person, one vote, one value, while repeatedly assuring southern states that they will not lose their political voice. The Congress has demanded wider consultations and has argued that any exercise must preserve India's federal balance. Southern parties, including the DMK, left parties and several state governments have consistently expressed concerns that states which successfully control population growth could see their relative representation decline after fresh seat allocation. Meanwhile, parties such as the BJD, YSRCP, AIDMK and BRS are being closely watched because their support or even abstention could prove decisive in Parliament. The implications extend well beyond delimitation itself. Two major electoral reforms are closely tied to this exercise. The implementation of women's reservation in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies has been linked to a fresh delimitation exercise, making boundary redrawing a necessary step before the new quotas take effect. Similarly, the government's broader push for one nation, one election is expected to intersect with any large-scale restructuring of parliamentary and assembly constituencies. That makes delimitation not just an isolated legislative proposal, but a foundational reform that could reshape India's electoral architecture for decades. In the coming session, therefore, the real contest may not simply be over maps and constituencies, it will be over parliamentary arithmetic. Because in the end, the future of delimitation will depend as much on constitutional procedure as it does on political numbers. And every vote, every abstention and every regional ally could make the difference. Joining us to talk more about this is Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist and a regular on our shows. Gautam, always a pleasure to have you on with us. Well, it's a good thing that 7 bills are up for consideration as well as passage. But the fact of the matter is that numbers are going to play a very important role over here, especially when you talk about delimitation for some of these southern states. Colloquially, you could term this process as a double-edged sword for them.
Well, I think most of them are on board. DMK in particular, which till recently was not a possibility, is on board. Some estimates put the overall tally at 350, with all the people who will either vote with the government or abstain. The two-thirds mark is 360. So it's really quite close, and a little bit of cross-voting perhaps is what the government is banking on, and appears to be quite confident of making the two-thirds. But more consequentially, if this is achieved in the case of delimitation, it will also be achieved in the case of women's reservation and one nation, one vote, which will change the political landscape, the three of them put together, very considerably, and put the opposition, such as it is, even after all this abstention, cross-voting, etc., on the mat. There are only two parties which are opposed, mainly because they do not want the government to succeed at one nation, one vote. And to do that, they have to stop the delimitation. They have to stop anything that calls for a two-thirds vote. And the government is perilously close to achieving that this time. It remains to be seen if they manage it or not.
Gautam, also reflect upon the conversation that is going on in terms of the protest that's happening in Jantar Mantar and the education reform bill. How are you looking at these two?
Well, the protest in Jantar Mantar is a non-starter. It has been trying to gain traction, and it doesn't seem to be doing so. It is disorganized. It does not have proper leadership. It does not even have one objective. It is in general opposition to the government without having any clear plan on what to do to spread it beyond the little park that they are sat in. Will it become a national movement? Looks very doubtful. Will a march to Parliament succeed? What march? How many people? Nothing is known and is not very inspiring. As far as the education ministry, education bill, things of that order, again, it hasn't gained any traction. In fact, it's taken the heat off the education minister by being inept and ineffective so far.
Fair enough, Gautam. Let's also hope, one last question before we let you go, that disruptions, as we have seen in the past, do not define this important parliament session.
Well, I would like to believe that, but judging from all past instances, it is highly unlikely, and the first few days are likely to be wasted with adjournments in one house and then the other and then in both. Towards the end of the session, I think possibly the bills will be passed, and that is the pattern we've grown used to. What we are expecting and what we hope for in terms of general debate and discussion in Parliament is nowadays a distant dream. It hardly ever happens.
You're quite right, Gautam. Always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for your perspective. We'll take a short break. Be right back.